And welcome on into the post-game pod edition of the Blue Horseshoe podcast. He is George Bremer. I am Ryan Hickey. We are coming to you hours after the Colts fall to the Rams 29-23 in overtime. This is an interesting game here, George. So I want to open the discussion because we have a lot to get to here in this post-game edition. So I want to ask you a question here to kind of get the ball rolling, and that is this. Colts down 23-0, did make a 23-0 run themselves in the second half to get this game to overtime. Ultimately do lose when the Rams march right down the field for a touchdown in overtime. Are you more, after this game, feeling disappointed the Colts got to such a slow start and did not finish strong? Or you feel more optimistic that in between those, there was still a lot of good, and despite the fact they were down 23-0, could have thrown the towel in, they did fight back and did just bare minimum get this game to overtime?
Yeah, well, and first of all, I want to know, we're a few weeks early, but is this our Indiana Nights edition of the podcast? Since we're a little bit later than usual, feels like the after dark version. We'll get ahead of that before those uniforms debut against the Browns.
Well, I'll tell you this,
But
George, really fast. What we're wearing is nowhere near as ugly as what you'll be seeing on what is that? Is it next week? It's a few weeks from now. A few weeks.
a couple weeks from now. Yeah, I think it's 3 weeks.
Right, when the Browns come. When the Browns come. That's it.
So that'll be its own thing. Well, I'm sure we'll have plenty to say about that once that rolls around. But for today, I think I'm more impressed with the comeback, especially given the situation. I don't know if the first half could have gone any worse for this team, not just in terms of the fact that it was 20-0, and that at that point the Rams had scored on every drive but one, and the one they didn't score on, they missed the field goal. And the offense really just didn't seem to have any answers. But coming into the day, you were already they had a backup left tackle, they had a backup center. That center making his second career start, Wesley French, and the quarterback, Anthony Richardson, making his third career start, are making the line protection calls while the Rams are moving Aaron Donald all over the field. The last thing you wanted was a big deficit and the Rams to know you had to throw the ball. And that's why I'm really impressed with the comeback, because I don't think that the circumstances could have been much worse for a comeback, all things considered. And yet, at some point, Richardson just started running away from Donald. He was making some really good plays on the run. The 35-yard touchdown pass he threw to Mo Alley-Cox with the defender hanging on him, literally, after he ran away to keep that drive alive. There aren't many guys in the league making that throw. Not completing it. Let's put it that way. It may make it, but it's not going to end that way. And then the two fourth quarter drives that tie the game were just big boy drives coming down the field and in crunch time, got to have it. A couple third down conversions. I think at least one fourth down conversion in that stretch. The kind of things that you just, honestly, I didn't think he'd be ready to do this early in his career. I mean, when we were talking all training camp long about the growing pains this kid was going to have, I'm thinking third down, red zone, into game situations. For him to come out there and hit all of them on those two fourth quarter drives is really impressive. Obviously, you'd like to see the game finish out differently. You'd like to see them win. The first half can't be replicated. That is certainly not sustainable. You can't fall behind by 20. Breaking news here on the Blue Horseshoe Pod. You cannot fall behind by 20 points every week. 23 by the time they actually got on the scoreboard. But even with that comeback, you go back to the miscommunication, whether it should have been a foul or not. I don't know exactly how it all turned out. You had a touchdown, to Pittman that wasn't completed. And definitely Richardson should have thrown that ball earlier. I'm going to give him a little bit of a break today, though, because he was running from one of the best players in the NFL for most of the game and just trying to stay alive. But, yeah, I'm not sure exactly what happened on that one. I know Pittman wanted a foul. He was really adamantly calling for the flag. The ball was right there. And it didn't, if he catches that one, it's a different outcome. Matt Gay missed the field goal in the second quarter that obviously ends up being a big 3 points in this game. So there's both sides of the ball. There's a dozen things I'd like to go back to. Probably, the one fourth quarter drive they didn't score on before the last one, after the interception. It felt like that was going to kill the comeback right there. You got the touchdown. You're back in the game. Huge play by Kenny Moore to get the interception. You're in their territory. And I think that's the drive that ended with the non-touchdown to Pittman. And at that point it felt like, well, good try, good run, but this is over. And then the Rams miss a field goal, and the Colts pounce on it, and Richardson, I thought on those two drives to tie the game, the 2 touchdowns, a rushing touchdown, a passing touchdown, 2-point conversion, none of that were things that I expected to see from him this year.
Because like this season, right? We don't really talk or not. Because this season wins and losses don't matter. I am with you in the sense that even though they lost and got off to a horrendous start, and again had the comeback, but then didn't finish it off, I'm still with you that I'm looking at and coming out of this game still positive, still optimistic about this team because number one, you saw flashes. You saw, I thought, flashes all throughout the team, not just offensively, but offensively and defensively, that this team can make plays. Now, the biggest thing for them is going to be consistency. And obviously, that's a big part now going forward, not just this season, but obviously now in years, in the years in the future here. Can you now be a more consistent playmaking team? If so, this team is going to be a dangerous team and going to be a team that, a lot of teams in the AFC South and the AFC Conference are going to have to reckon with here. Going forward, if you have AR making some of these flash plays he made on a consistent basis, almost Mahomes-esque, if you will. So that is a reason for optimism, but also to start off what you said, it was an absolutely atrocious first half. Now you're down 20-0. Offensively, you can't get 2 first drives to go together. Anthony Richardson is missing passes. Like you said, the rush, it was all over him. The run game really did not get established whatsoever. Anything that could have gone wrong for this team, offensively, defensively, did go wrong. And especially when you have a young rookie quarterback and the tough day he had for the first 2.5 quarters, he could have and probably should have just thrown the towel in. Not my day. I missed the last game and a half, so I'm still rusty trying to get back. The offensive line's banged up. Like, you could have written this game off, George, and be like, okay, you know what? We lose 35-7. It happens. I'm a rookie. This team's young, whatever. To his credit, Richardson, that is, and the rest of the team's credit, they did not. They came out fighting, like I said, score a touchdown, you get a pick. You love to see them, convert on that and convert that into points, which they did not. But then to still score 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns in a fourth quarter that we talked about going into the Ravens game, they did not score a point and allowed, I forget what it was. I think it was 24 points, I think the first 2 games in the fourth quarter to the Jaguars and the Texans. So they're going to outscore in the fourth quarter. And so you play well, you make the plays you got to make. And also, like you said, clutch plays, right? The clutch 3rd down conversions, clutch 4th down conversions, clutch touchdown passes, clutch 2-point conversion attempt as well. Like, they made some big plays where, yes, again, with the ball in your hands, minute 30 left in a tie game, when you have momentum on your side, you want to see them go finish the job and get a field goal. But they showed resilience and did not quit, which I thought was really impressive and really encouraging to see. And they showed, again, not consistently enough, obviously, in the loss, but showed flashes all throughout the game of, wow, if this team can put it together, George, they're not only going to be dangerous, they're going to be a lot of fun to watch.
And put Shane Steichen in that category too. I mean, obviously the start is on him. He took that in the post game that, obviously they've got to be better coming out of the gate. They cannot do that. But you saw some more of that creativity from him again. They lined up for a fake punt at one point. It was different than the running the offense on and off. They basically had Gardner already out there, and they lined up in formation. They ended up not running a play and calling timeout, but it's another thing opponents are going to have to look at. I thought the most fun thing today was twice down in the red zone, they got into an inverted wishbone and shifted out of it. I think they scored touchdowns on both plays. I know they did both drives. But that's another thing that now opposing defense coordinators are going to have to wonder, are they going to run a play out of that formation? What might that look like with this quarterback? And even the plays they did run shifting out of that formation, they're going to have to worry about because they were both successful. I just think it's another example of how creative Shane Steichen is. And how much that can add to this football team. But in Richardson's case, you want to look at America's newest sensation other than Taylor Swift. It's Prime talking the other day about Colorado, and he said this is the worst they're ever going to be. That they're still learning. You can see where they're coming. To me, Anthony Richardson is the NFL version of that program. You can see where he's headed. And he's still not reading the full field. They're doing half field reads for the most part. He's running earlier than he will be. He's not seeing things as well as he will. You can see where he's headed, and you can make the argument this is the worst Anthony Richardson's going to be, and he still almost single-handedly won the game today in the fourth quarter.
He made a few plays where your jaw's just like, holy cow. And again, he had some nice plays against the Jaguars, and early on, those 2 touchdown runs, I think it was next gen stats. I forget the exact percentage. It was like 1% of NFL players would have had his second touchdown run would have scored. But Anthony Richardson's in like the 99th percentile. And he was just, I guess the first. By the way, I really hate this. This is a totally different side conversation really fast here. I hate when they talk percentiles, how they make 99 percentile like the largest portion. I feel like 1 percentile should be like the most general. Like if you're in the 99th percentile, kind of like speed or power. If you were at 99, right, in Madden, that is like basically strong, right? If you were 99 in the 99 club, you were one of the best players in the NFL. I hate how if you're in the 99th percentile, it's that you're basically in the percentile you and I are in. So I know it's more of a me problem. So to flip it, he was in that 1 percentile, that first percentile of players that could have made that second touchdown running against Houston, get in the end zone. Most players are getting stopped, to credit him. So again, we've seen a few plays against the Jaguars and Texans where it's like, wow. But I really thought the Rams game, he put together the most wow plays. And a lot of it was because he's under pressure. He's rolling out, running for his life away from Aaron Donald, but still on the run. The fact, George, you mentioned the Michael Pittman pass in the end zone where, again, it was weird where the ball was like right there and did not catch it. Whether he was interfered with and got spun around or not is debatable. But the fact that on the run, he threw that much zip and had that much, juice on that, the few other throws too, where he's like off balance, off platform, and still the ball gets us. How is this truly possible? It is just unbelievable. And again, if he just is able to harness that, put a little bit more accuracy, a little more touch on those passes, to your point, see the field a little bit sooner, that's just going to convert into big plays and touchdowns and explosiveness, which again, we saw a few explosive plays from this offense. It's still a work in progress in terms of trying to get the big play more consistently. But you definitely saw that from Richardson on Sunday. And this offense a little bit more. You had Alec Pierce with a really nice catch as well. Drew Ogletree with a nice touchdown, which again, that was another one of those plays was like, how the hell is Richardson throwing this, let alone throwing it on the run accurately with all that juice on it behind it to get it to Drew? Or I'm sure not Drew, Mo Alley Cox. Sorry, I got my tight ends mixed up there. Mo Alley Cox on the first touchdown. I was like, holy cow, what a throw that was. Again, about consistency, right? But still, there was a few plays where I was truly left speechless.
I want to see the next gen stats on that touchdown to Mo Alley Cox and see what percentile makes that throw. He's definitely in the upper quartile of that one. And then the other, I think maybe the most impressive play for me in the whole day was the first 2-point conversion. That play was completely blown up. Steichen said afterwards that it went exactly where they didn't want it to go. And somehow Richardson runs around. It looked at one point like he was going to try to run it in, and he ends up pulling up. And Zach Moss, by the time Richardson extended the play for like 15 seconds, is wide open in the corner of the end zone, and the play works. I think that's where he's going to be really deadly. I mean, you saw them convert 2-point conversions, today. Him down there, that close to the line of scrimmage, is going to be tough for defense because you don't know what he's going to do. And even when they're right, they're wrong. They did everything right on the first 2-point conversion, and he just kept the play alive long enough that the Colts converted it. That's another one I want to see the next gen stats on.
And I'm glad you're 100% right, brother. It's one of those where it's like, no, 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 no. Yes. Oh, what a conversion, right? That looked dead from the start. And he just found frankly, just willed his way to make that play and keep the Colts alive in that spot. Again, that big 2-point conversion that still kept it a 2-possession game. So credit to him. And I'm glad you brought that up. And I'm glad you brought the red zone because I was so impressed. And you brought up Shane Steichen's creativity too, with Shane Steichen's creativity on the last 2 touchdowns, because Jonathan Vilma pointed out on the broadcast. I thought he was 100% right. The second touchdown on the first touchdown in the fourth quarter, second touchdown in the game for the Colts, it was right an Anthony Richardson draw. Steps back, tucks it, runs. And then on the game, what eventually was the game-tying touchdown drive, Shane Steichen in the same exact formation called a play where it made it seem like, oh, here comes the quarterback draw, right? It's going to be Anthony Richardson right up the middle. Of course it is. But what did he do? Said passed and called a pass play to Drew Ogletree. There's a reason why Drew is wide open. Because the Rams defense thought, oh, here comes the quarterback draw. And so Shane Steichen's credit, he dressed up the play to make it look like a quarterback draw, already running the quarterback draw before to have the Rams thinking, oh, it's going to be Richardson here by the goal line, obviously. And it set up an easy touchdown pass to Drew Ogletree. And then on the 2-point conversion, put Michael Pittman and Jr. a nice little motion there to get him wide open with the 2-point conversion. I thought, like I said, on that 2-point, the first one, the 2-point conversion was all on Anthony Richardson. But I thought the last 2 touchdowns and that 2-point conversion of Michael Pittman Jr. to get the game in overtime, a lot of that is on Shane Steichen and his creativity for just putting defenses in the blender.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm so interested in what's going on special teams and in this inverted wishbone that they're running, because those examples that you were just talking about were obvious things that he set up during the game. I feel like the special team stuff, the inverted wishbone, that's the long game. That's setting up for something down the road. And I can't wait to see what that eventually is, how they're going to pay those things off. Also, I'm interested. You obviously had your national show today, the whip around eye on the NFL. But you said you got a little bit of an interview and there was some praise coming Anthony Richardson's way there as well.
It was weird. Yeah. So we're doing CBS Sports Radio's coverage. We call it Eye on Football, basically Red Zone of radio. And so after the game, it was definitely weird because the Colts game was like it's 20-0. There was a bunch of other close games. Like, all right, well, unfortunately, we can't do as many Colts updates because nationally in a 20-0 game, you kind of just move away from it. Here they come, slowly come back. I was like, holy cow, they can make a comeback. And then obviously to fall short stinks. But after the game, it hurts because it's like, can't be biased. So Ernest Jones of the Rams comes on, leading tackler, played a good game for the Rams. And it's like, you try to be like, oh, Ernest, great win, man. Happy for you, even though you're not. But I thought something, George, he said something that really should resonate with everyone here coming out of this game. And that was this, asking about the toughest part to defend Anthony Richardson. And he said right away, the Colts got a real one in AR. So again, that's coming from a player's perspective in which, again, for the first half, they put Richardson kind of basically, put him in a blender, right? That he was confused. The offensive line stunk. They could get nothing going. And you see that second half performance. That's a guy, at least Ernest Jones, who's now, right, game planned all weekend how to stop Richardson and then was on the field with them. If he's telling you that's a real one, George, I think that's a great sign. Again, another reason for optimism, even though it was a loss on Sunday, that the Colts, again, going forward here, have a true difference maker.
It looks like they've got two. To me, I just, the fact that you see Richardson doing what he's doing, all that pressure today, all the backup line, the fact that Aaron Donald's over there, he got sacked twice and they lost 4 yards on those two things. I don't even want to hazard a guess what those numbers would have been like if Gardner Minshew had to play again today in this situation. There's just things that Richardson does that are not normal. I mean, you talk about the next gen stats on that touchdown, the 1% of the league is going to score on that play. That's him. He's a freak in every conceivable version of the word. So, he's definitely a real one. And I think Shane Steichen is as well. I mean, we talked about this last week. Another example today. The one thing we said we had to see from this team, besides development from Anthony Richardson, was fight. You wanted to see them compete. You wanted to see them, go through every whistle. Here again today, I had the game written off. You were talking about they could write it off. I had written it off. Thought it was over. In my head, I was writing, a story about how the Rams had exposed them and they got a lot of work to do. And here they come back again, showing you that fight, that spirit in this team. Would you rather see them be more consistent? Absolutely. Would you rather see them get a victory today? Of course, that's the name of the game. But I don't know how you walk away from this clear-eyed, not feeling good about where this franchise is headed.
And a lot of that has to do with, like I said, the two most important positions for success going forward here, head coach and quarterback. Speaking of quarterback, George, maybe the last, at least optimistic point of view here before we kind of do recognize and address the negatives from this game, which there still are plenty, don't get us wrong here, is the fact that for the first time in his career, George, Anthony Richardson finished a game. He started an NFL game and he finished an NFL game. It took 3 starts and 4 games overall, but he is now, again, finally someone who could say, I've started and finished an NFL game. And I'll be honest, I'm a little surprised. Early in that game, he took a few hits where I'm like, oh my God. I mean, Aaron Donald obviously is causing problems. He's exposing himself a few times, even though he learned how to slide and run out of bounds. A few times he got twisted up and down, slammed down. I'm covering my eyes going, George, he's not going to make it. He's not going to make it. And his credit, he made it.
Took some really hard hits again. showed his toughness. Yeah, finally finished the game. I don't remember what we put the over-under at for his touchdowns, total touchdowns, but I got a feeling that we're both going to be wrong on that one because 3 games in for him, 4 games into the season, he's already been responsible for 7 touchdowns, 4 rushing, 3 passing. I forget what stat it is, but the 4th touchdown today, I think it's since 2000, only 5 players at any position have scored 4 touchdowns in the first 3 games of the season. One of the guys on that list with him is LaDainian Tomlinson. When you are on a list with LaDainian Tomlinson, you're doing something right.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's some pretty high praise. You're not wrong about that. And also, too, impressively, not only did he finish the game, that's showing toughness, but also, too, like even going back to that first touchdown pass. Now, again, I know it wasn't a big hit, but I think it was Braden Smith stepped on him, so he's hobbling around. He got crushed with that 2-point conversion. And his credit just kept coming back, kept getting up, kept wanting more. Again, never threw in the towel. And you saw, again, not only physical toughness from Richardson, having his body hold up to some big shots he took, but the mental toughness as well. Again, to keep on going out there, keep fighting, and not throwing in the towel or not even getting gun shy and just kind of, again, starting to get a little spooked and go down sooner or start to have your eyes drop down to the rush. I thought both mentally and physically, he showed a lot of strength on Sunday.
And you know what he's showing is an ability to lift the team around him. And I think that's always one of the biggest separators for quarterbacks. The good ones to the great ones. The great ones are the ones that can make everybody around them better. Those plays that you were talking about earlier, 2-point conversion that went wrong, the touchdown pass to Mo Alley Cox, the touchdown pass to Drew Ogletree. Those are plays that he's lifting the offense, plays that probably shouldn't have been made. This early in his career, I did not expect to see him doing that.
Not at all. And like I said, so far it's been impressive to watch in the short 3-game sample size that we've seen Anthony Richardson so far. But again, even in the loss, right? Still a lot of optimism, still a lot of reason to believe, not just for the rest of this season, but for years to come, George. Fingers crossed if he can stay healthy and continue on this upward trajectory. Okay. I think for the most part, right, we hit any positives, any ones we leave off here in terms of positive attribution that we don't, leave anyone short, but positive attribution for this game before we do turn negative.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're going to do game balls yet, but mine goes to Dio Adengbo. He just had a huge game. I think he had like 6 tackles, a sack. He had a forced fumble. They didn't recover. Almost turned the game around earlier for that comeback. He was just everywhere. And I think just continuing what's been an upward trajectory for him since the end of last season, another reason to really get excited going forward for this football team.
You're right about that. Dio, 1.5 sacks. He's credited with 1 tackle for loss as well, 4 quarterback hits. He was really good. He was absolutely really good. But I'm glad you brought up Dio and especially the defensive line specifically, because on that note, Dio individually, really good game for him. I thought, though, George, one of the biggest disappointments in this game was the Colts defensive line. We talked about it going into this game. It should have been on paper a matchup where with the Rams offensive line banged up going into this game, should have been the 4th straight game that they set the tone defensively and get after the quarterback. And you look at it so far, you had a total of, what was it? You did have 9 QB hits. You did hit Matthew Stafford around, but only got him to the ground twice. And the times you didn't, he picked this defense apart. And so we gave the secondary credit last week, right, against Lamar Jackson, the Ravens. On Sunday, I think you saw if this defense can't get home with 4 guys, defense, when they're left out there, they're getting exposed. And they saw that again on Sunday, big time.
And, one thing about the NFL, everybody knows rush and cover works hand in hand. And they were able to get Matthew Stafford in particular, being the veteran that he is, having seen everything. The Colts are trying to disguise things, trying to give him different looks. I don't know at this point in his career you can give him a look he hasn't seen before. Good to their credit to try. But he was getting rid of the ball so fast today because of that, because he knew, okay, look, we've got a banged up offensive line too. They've got a pretty good pass rush. I'm not going to hold the ball. The Bengals on Monday night were able to kind of force him to hold it a little bit longer because they had better coverage downfield. The Colts today, you could see where that's going to be a problem. And it's something that, as we've been talking about reasons for optimism all day, one big concern coming out of this game, Dallas Flowers has an ankle injury. Don't know how long it's going to be. Don't have any severity on it. I know he was on crutches in the locker room after the game. That is already a thin position, as we know. Getting a little bit thinner. They ended up having to put Jalen Jones in for the end of this one. I think it's going to be, my guess is going to be at least a week or 2, if not more, that Flowers is out. And it doesn't look like it's a break right now. We'll find out more when MRIs and things like this come through. But this secondary has got to hold up its end of the bargain. As good as that front can be, and as good as Dio Dangbo was today, and needs to be mentioned today, they weren't playing with a full set of snaps from DeForest Buckner. He didn't practice all week, was questionable coming in. Grover Stewart got dinged up late in the week. He didn't play his normal amount either. So the line was shuffled a little bit. You had some new faces in there. Adetomiwa Adebere made his NFL debut today. They had some other guys in there. Eric Johnson playing a little bit more than normal. Taven Bryan's reps increased. It was not a perfect situation on the defensive line either. But it's not going to be. That's the NFL. You're going to have attrition. You're going to have weeks like this. The secondary's got to play better than it has to this point. The line cannot cover for them every week. And if you're going to let the quarterback get rid of the ball as quickly as Stafford did today, and some of that is him being one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, give him some credit too. It's not going to end well though. And that's basically what you saw on that last drive in overtime. Defense had done a really good job the whole second half. Got some really big stops again, like they did against Baltimore, but Stafford it was too easy for him. They're on the final drive.
And part of that too, George, the easiness, right? We talked this on Thursday. So honestly, credit to us because we both pointed out, and Rich haven't agreed when we had him on to preview the Rams side of gives the Rams perspective on this game, was the fact that Sean McVay's offense, right? They're beating you more deception. They're going to try to have you miscommunicate. And I thought the Colts secondary did exactly that. There was a lot of miscommunication where you look on even the final play of the game, Puka Nacua is wide open, and Parker's two guys go with Tutu Atwell, and there's Nacua by himself catching the ball 5 yards and turns around and walks right in the end zone. The game ends on a miscommunication. So it's part of that too, where it's like, yes, the rush did not get home, and you're right in general, right? When the pass rush doesn't get home, even the best secondaries you can't cover for 5, 6, 7 seconds. So understandable. But again, we saw, especially with this young outside corner depth, especially, you got to get home. And to the Colts' credit, the first 3 games, they were able to do that consistently. In this game, in part because of injuries, in part because of also, too, Matthew Stafford getting the ball out fast. They were unable to get a ton of pressure and alter the Rams' offense too much, get them off schedule. And also, too, when that's happening, now miscommunications were going on in the secondary and the back end. That led to, again, Puka Nacua, amongst others, running open and getting some good feeds, getting some good lanes, I should say. Nacua makes a tough catches. Credit to him. He's been unbelievable so far this year, and replaced with Cooper Kupp. But also, too, feels like, Colts communication-wise also doomed themselves a few times in this game.
And again, Sean McVay, that's his game. I mean, credit to him and Matthew Stafford. They have Super Bowl rings for a reason. It's not an accident over there. And Aaron Donald are absolutely game wreckers when they want to be. And I know last year did not go the way the Rams wanted it to go. They came in, we talked about it on the preview pod. They were going to be a desperate team. They came in like a desperate team, took the lead. Everything seemed to be going their way. And I give Colts credit for getting back into it and making them sweat it out. But at the end of the day, I think the Rams experience it was very similar. It played out completely differently, but it was very similar to week 1 against Jackson, where you were just facing a team with a really good quarterback, really good head coach. In both cases, Super Bowl winning head coaches, by the way, both losses this year to guys with championship rings. And at the end of the day, their experience won out. Well, that's not going to be an excuse forever, but 4 weeks into their first season together for Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen, I'll allow it.
That's fair. No, you're very right about that. And before you mentioned, I just want to throw this out there. You mentioned it cracked me up. Like, Matthew Stafford's seen it all, right? Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay have seen it all, so it's tough to confuse them. One thing I personally, maybe you have, I have not seen in my life, George, at least I can remember, was on the final 3rd down in regulation. I think it was the 3rd and 1. The Colts dropped 11. I've literally never seen the Colts. Usually you'll drop maybe 9 and you'll have like one pass rush just to be there, just to force some sort of token pressure. I've never seen a full 11-man drop before. It resulted in an incompletion and eventually a punt for the Rams to get to overtime. I've never seen that.
I don't think Matthew Stafford had seen that one either. That's the one time he did seem to be surprised. He just kind of held the ball for a minute and didn't quite know what to do and ended up trying to throw it over towards the sideline, and it was obviously incomplete. But yeah, that was unique. That was new. Wasn't a great day for the defense overall, obviously. Wasn't a great day for the offense overall. And I think that's another thing here. I don't know where the Rams are going to end up. They're 2-2 now. They've got some good talent over there. They're going to get Cooper Kupp back. You figure they're going to have a good season, but you don't know. It's the NFL. Strange things happen every week in this league. Miami went from winning by 50 to losing by 28. This is a league that makes no sense on a weekly basis. But as you see, the Rams with the game breakers that they have, the Colts couldn't, on a day that they didn't play well on either side of the ball, you wouldn't give either side high marks today, hung in there, forced it to overtime. There's something to be said for that.
No, you're right. You're right. And that's, I think, part of the reason why, at least when we started this pod, we both said it's an optimistic loss in the sense that, like you said, it's a tough opponent, right? They came back, they battled, they made plays against good talent, good competition. Again, you want to see them finish a job, but absolutely, it's not one of those where you feel like you gave it away, you lost to an inferior opponent, or just played totally bad. There definitely were flashes for both. One of those other areas too, Giorgio, I thought that was disappointing that I thought the Colts would have the advantage in and did not, was in the running attack. We talked about going into, this game, the Rams' last two games, you are able to get Sean McVay out of running the football if you shut it down early. We saw that against the 49ers in week number 2 do that, and we saw it last week against the Bengals. Those two teams stopped the run early, and Sean McVay basically abandoned the run. The two teams that weren't able to stop the run early, the Seahawks in week 1, Colts now on Sunday, both resulting in Rams wins. We talked about the balance in terms of run pass. If you can get the Rams out of whack, that will play right into your hands and be a pass-happy offense. You can predict what's coming. 40 pass attempts for Matthew Stafford, 36 rush attempts for the Rams. So they're able to establish balance. Part of the reason why they had a lot of success, 36 carries for 164 yards as a team, 2 rushing scores, 4.6 yards per carry. That was an area, again, we talked about the offensive line when they were banged up for the Rams coming in. Colts, I thought, had done a good job so far stopping the run. Coming into today, allowed just 114 yards on the ground, as I just read, 164 on Sunday. That was one of the big reasons why this team and this game finished in a loss.
I think both sides of the ball, the run game let the Colts down. There's no doubt. Second straight week that a Notre Dame player really hurt this team. Kyle Hamilton with 3 sacks last week, and this week Kyron Williams, 2 touchdowns, 103 yards on the ground. That's Rich said it in the preview pod. Balance was the key to this offense, and he felt like if they got any kind of semblance of a run game, it would be a good day for him. They had, I think, beyond even his expectations, how well they were able to run the ball today. And that's not good moving forward. I mean, the Colts can't allow that today. Obviously, they can't allow it. I think this opponent coming in next week, pretty good run the football, I'm told, in the Tennessee Titans. So you might want to fix this problem in a hurry. But then on the other side, outside of Anthony Richardson, who had 10 carries for 56 yards, obviously his 4th touchdown, 3.7 yards per carry. That's not going to cut it. That's not good enough. So the Colts really were kind of one-dimensional, and that one dimension was Richardson just being superhuman, and the Rams were not. And that's turnovers were even. Those are the kind of things that you look for in each of these games. Who's turning the ball over, who's able to have balance, who's able to kind of dictate to the other team. Almost everything went the Rams' way in that regard, and that's obviously not sustainable for the Colts.
No, you're right. And we'll talk this here in a little bit and really talk about it more throughout the week as we do get set here for week number 5. But it does appear at least that Jonathan Taylor is on the mend, if you want to even call it that, but at least on his way to being activated off of PUP, which again, this will definitely help this run game establish more, again, durability. No one I thought it was realistic to think Zach Moss is going to come in and run for 120 yards a game. And so, again, he's been a good placeholder, and I think someone who definitely could be the thunder to Jonathan Taylor's lightning and a nice 1-2 punch in the backfield, absolutely. But in terms of being a top 5 running back and just replacing Jonathan Taylor flat out, no one ever thought that. And again, this was a reminder of that. Again, not a bad game. It was a solid game for Zach Moss, who, again, had definitely a stronger second half than first half. 18 carries, 70 yards on the day, just under 4 yards a carry, which solid, decent, okay, you could definitely do better. You want to see a little more production out of the run game. But again, with help, hopefully, seemingly on the way, George, it makes, I guess, that area a little bit more acceptable in a loss like this. One area that I thought we saw by far the worst Anthony Richardson have in his, again, very short 3-game sample size of a career here was accuracy. Finished 11 for 25. That is a completion percentage that's not going to fly at any point in his career. And again, we talked about it, right? He played pretty well in Jacksonville, especially decision-making wise, made some good decisions and some good throws. The little bit we saw, barely anything we saw in Houston was solid, but this was one where accuracy especially really did trouble Anthony Richardson on Sunday.
Especially in the first half. Again, so many of this goes back to that first half, which was just awful. Just missing throws in the first half, missing guys that were open, overthrowing. A lot of it was high throws. A lot of it was, like I said, little out patterns in the flat that he just wasn't sharp on. And in the NFL, you're going to pay for that. I mean, anything you do that helps the other team, generally they're going to pounce on, and they're going to make you wish you hadn't done it. But again, that's where I think he was 6 of 11 in the fourth quarter for 118 yards, which is really good. And he was 6 of 8 if you don't count the last drive, which obviously you do need to count, and you want that consistency there. You want to put points up there and walk away with a win. But I like the fact that on a day where he was off, where his accuracy was the worst we've seen it be so far, he was still able to not just impact the game, but to turn that very particular thing around when he needed it most.
And in the biggest moments, right? It's not, he turned it around the fourth quarter, but it's 35-7. And, the defense is playing prevent defense. Like I said, he was able to do that in the fourth quarter in crunch time, in clutch time as well. So it's a really positive sign that in the biggest moments, he was able to hone in, lock in, and definitely change it around. That last drive for the Colts on offense, George, is interesting because especially look at that third down throw, a really nice throw to Kylan Granson, one that if you look on the stat sheet will go down as an incompletion. But even though I thought the Colts receivers today, Alec Pierce, with a really strong catch, fighting through pass interference and getting hit late, like a really strong play by him. Again, Mo Cox made a nice play as well. Josh Downs had a really nice catch over the middle that was perfectly thrown from Anthony Richardson. I thought Colts, for the most part, again, there wasn't a lot of opportunities to make a play in this game. I thought when they were given the opportunity, more times than not, the Colts receivers and tight ends made plays. So it's a credit to them that percentage-wise, I think it's getting higher in terms of percentage of them coming through and making a big play when needed. But that was one where Kylan Granson, George, just again, off of just a first look, feels like should have caught that ball. And if you catch that ball, you don't want to have an entire game boiled down to one play, but it feels like, which was a good throw by Anthony Richardson, you catch that ball, Colts win the game.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a minute left, and they were going to be right around midfield. So if he makes that catch and you get maybe another decent run out of Richardson, you're in field goal range. I know Matt Gay missed earlier in the game, but I think everyone feels pretty comfortable with him after the Baltimore game. It could be a totally different story right now. But that's the NFL. That's what it comes down to. You got to make that catch. You can't have a penalty early on like EJ Speed did that extends a drive. Second drive, they had the penalty by Kenny Moore, a targeting penalty. I guess just unnecessary roughness in the NFL, but essentially a targeting penalty.
Did you have a problem with that, George?
I think it looked bad live. I think when you see the replay, I don't think it probably should have been called, but it looked bad live. And I think it's more because of the way he leapt at him. I think if he keeps his feet there, a little bit more under control, he probably doesn't get that flag. But those are the things that you can't do. I mean, that's 30 yards that they handed the Rams on those first two scoring drives, and when you're in a 14-0 hole. And then the first time they get the ball after that, Richardson fumbles. So that's, you go back to that final drive and the touchdown pass and how easy it was, all those mistakes in the first half, you turn around just a couple of them, and the Colts win in regulation. And that's life in the NFL. When Kylan Granson makes that catch, if they take advantage of the Kenny Moore interception, if they don't get the flag on EJ Speed, all these things change the course of that football game. Missed field goal by Matt Gay. Of course, the Rams had 2. So, they're not feeling much better about it on that end. But that's the NFL. At the end of the day, those little details are what make the difference between wins and losses. I think good for a young team to experience that and hopefully understand that, because coming next week, if we start spinning this forward a little bit, you got a rival coming in here. Tennessee, They're coming off a big win against Cincinnati. Obviously, the whole division is tied. It's going to be a really big Week 5 game, and we know the recent history against Titans is not good.
No, you are absolutely right about that. And look, you talked about before, like, the struggles in the run game, and now you better shore that up because here comes Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is having a career low year coming into Week 4. And then it seems like he caught some life against the Bengals, absolutely beat him up, rushing touchdown and throwing touchdown. So it's hard enough to defend Derrick Henry on the ground. Now he's going through the air again and tossing touchdowns. Yeah, that's one where, like I said, recent history has not been on the Colts side in that rivalry. And now when you look at the run game problems after Week 4, you don't shore those up. You don't have better tackling. You don't just play smart. Right? That's where a Mike Vrabel team truly, I think, has the edge. They are a smart team. You give them an extra opportunity, they're going to make you pay. And like you mentioned, EJ Speed too, third down play, you're getting off the field. You were getting off the field on the first drive of the game. That penalty extends the drive. Rams cash in for 6. And that's, again, you just mentioned 5 or 6 plays. One arguably those plays changes, it's a different ball game. And it goes to the fact that we talked about it. The Colts are not good enough right now to overcome their mistakes. And especially no team is good enough to overcome their mistakes when we're talking about 5 or 6 compiled on top of each other in one game that give a good team like the Rams extra opportunities, extra life. And those teams with championship DNA like the Rams are still having a lot of those players held over from their 2021 Super Bowl. They're going to make you pay. And that's, I think, like I said, what we kind of saw today here. The difference being an experienced team in the Rams versus still an inexperienced, young, and learning team here in the Colts. You gave before your game ball to Dayo Adengbo for his big game and his stud, greatness, I should say, the sack and a half. Sorry, I'm trying to pull up the stats there fast just to reiterate his sack and a half on Matthew Stafford. I'm debating here. I mean, I guess I'll do it. I mean, right, because we're going to give it to Colts anyway, win or lose. I'll give it to Anthony Richardson. I feel weird giving a quarterback game ball, but again, the Colts are not in overtime if it's not for him. Really, again, the second half of the third quarter on, transforming his game, improving the accuracy, making splash plays, making, some literal game-changing plays, swinging momentum almost by his side. Thought he really turned it on, made a lot of smart decisions as well. So again, even though it was a loss, even though the first 2.5 quarters were for the most part forgettable, and you want to forget them as soon as you can, it's one of those where, again, it's, okay, no, you hopefully learn, hopefully get better, and hopefully going forward here, this is a good learning experience and helps shape a little bit more consistency with this team going forward. We'll finish with this, George. A little tease to Tuesday's pod and also the week that is upcoming as well as you start to head to look to week number 5. One of the things that could be changing for this team in a positive is the potential return of Jonathan Taylor. Monday, George, should say a lot about at least the future and the possibility of him returning to the field in week number 5.
Yeah, you're going to see opening that 3-week window they have. At least that's the reports coming out on Sunday. He's going to come off a pup. He's going to open up that 21-day window where he can practice. I wouldn't expect him to play this week against Tennessee, but we'll see how everything comes together after that, how quickly he can get out there. Obviously, if they can get him back and he can look anything like he did in 2021, you add him to this offense, what Anthony Richardson's been able to do, the power running of Zach Moss. Now you put a home run hitter like Jonathan Taylor in there. It can help take this team to another level. And we'll see. We were talking about it before. Don't think it's crazy that this team could win 8 games. We thought we were being conservative with those picks. You can go back and find that pod. I think it was last Tuesday's pod where we were kind of predicting, where they might go here moving forward. John Taylor would help a lot to get to the higher end of that level.
Absolutely. He would. So his stat, obviously throughout the weekend, especially Tuesday, we'll update you, and Thursday as well, update you on his status and potential playing possibility if he plays, the pitch count that he'll be on for Sunday. What about media availability, George? Do you have any idea how that will work in the sense that, do you expect to talk to him at some point this week?
Normally when guys come off up, we do. Obviously, nothing's normal about this situation, and we'll see how all that all plays out. I think most of the things that have gone on from his standpoint are defensible. I don't think it's going to be hard for him to talk about being angry about the running back situation, about feeling like he's not getting his value. I don't think that's going to be tough answers for him. The one thing's the ankle. I think that's probably the one that he's going to have to answer for. That's probably a little bit tougher. But for the most part, we talked about it, again last week. The most important thing now is he ready to put his grievances behind him, and to join this team that seems to be all in behind Shane Steichen. If he is, then you can worry about all the other stuff at the end of the year. If he's not, then that's another problem this team's going to have to figure out how to handle.
You're right. And I'll say this right now with how the Bears are handling Chase Claypool, where Claypool's called out the coaches and then he's now a healthy scratch. And now the Bears are saying, well, we didn't tell him to, we told him to stay home. And Matt Eberflus is telling, oh, no, we gave him the option. He chose to stay home. As you can see, George, things, if you're not on the same page communication-wise, can get messy and ugly quick. It is totally just a dumpster fire right now in Chicago in front of Rice the last 2 or 3 weeks. Again, it's been a dumpster fire right in Indy when you have Jim Irsay versus Jonathan Taylor during training camp. At least for now, things have subsided. But again, it could easily pick up if the Colts don't handle this right from a PR perspective, if everyone is not on the same page, if communication is lacking in any area as well. So now, again, we should, and again, we'll give you more clarity on this on Tuesdays as we go along, possibly hear from Jonathan Taylor this week. That's the one thing we've not heard, right? He's posted a few social media videos, a few tweets here and there, but for the most part, he's remained low, remained quiet. I'm sure he'll have some stuff to say, but that's where, again, if you're the Colts now, like I said, part of putting a winning product on the field is kind of controlling your own business. And part of that and kind of keeping your house in order. Part of that's going to be this week. If Jonathan Taylor is made available to the media and is off PUP, part of that's going to be making sure everyone's on the same page here, communication wise, and everyone understands either he's a member of this team, how he's going to run the offense, what the practice schedule is going to be like. Can't have any sort of miscommunication both on and off the field when it comes to the Colts relationship with their star running back.
Yeah, I think in general, you don't want to do anything that reminds anybody of the Bears this year. So you definitely don't want to turn that into a Claypool situation. You don't want any of that being repeated. And again, if Taylor's willing to go all in with this team, then it could be a very, very good development for this football team. If not, they've dealt with adversity since day one. So we'll see how they handle that.
For all the Office fans out there, there's a famous line from Dwight Schrute who said, one of the greatest pieces of advice he ever received was from Michael Scott, and said, think to yourself before you do something. Would an idiot do this? And if so, do not do it. You said it before. If you're the Colts this week, think to yourself, will the Bears do this? If the answer is yes, don't do it, George. Do not do it. Don't say it. Don't do it. Do the opposite. Do the opposite.
Pretty good advice for the NFL and the Bears themselves. Would we do this? Maybe we should do the other thing. I think that's a good advice for the NFL in general this year. Would the Bears do it?
Do
the answer is yes. You should not do it.
Be like George Costanza. Do the opposite of everything inside, internally tells you to do, and then you should be good to go. For the Bears, do that. And if you're the Colts, yeah, maybe the Bears would do this. Stop, drop, throw that idea out, and turn around and do the total opposite thing. So again, finally here, Colts do lose to the Rams 29-23 in overtime. A frustrating game, but also an encouraging game, George. They do leave now 2-2. And based on this is a true optimistic versus pessimistic view here. If you truly are an optimist, you're looking at this, hey, through 4 weeks, tied for first in the division, 2-2. If you're pessimistic, well, through 4 weeks, you're tied for last place, same old Colts. So this is truly a battle of half glass, half empty versus glass, half full sort of thinking as we work our way to week number 5 and get ready for a division battle against the hated Titans. Should be a lot of fun, but also should be very interesting to see Jonathan Taylor, his status and his practice availability. We'll keep you updated on that in Tuesday's pod. So make sure you subscribe on YouTube, Blue Horseshoe Podcast. Download the podcast wherever you do get your podcasts, Blue Horseshoe Pod. And we'll talk to you on Tuesday right here on the Blue Horseshoe Podcast.